I titled today's conversation Mind Map, Allowing That Pure Light of Awareness to Emerge. Allowing that pure light of awareness to emerge. So, you are that, and by that is meant Neville Goddard in his wonderful book, Power of Awareness. He said, I am is a feeling of permanent awareness. The very center of consciousness is the feeling of I am. So you are that prior to any kind of thoughts of lack, limitation, body, emotions, this world. You transcend the mind. Your presence illumines the mind, yes, yet you transcend the mind. And you also know now, as we've been discussing, not because I said so, because that would be egotistical, but because you know that. You know that. You are that perfection. You are that complete perfection. It is the absolute, undeniable truth. And there's no dodging this conclusion unless you want to waste your priceless attention on what doesn't matter. What matters is yourself. Yourself, capital S-E-L-F, the absolute truth, prior to all these illusions appearing to disappear to reflect that absolute truth. I am that pure awareness, and my real nature is perfection. That perfection consciousness I am, and what is not, that is blown away by grace and grace alone. Practically speaking, as you do not identify with thoughts in relation to whatever appears in your life that suggest lack or limitation or not being that, what happens is not only do those thoughts disappear, or as I say sometimes, they appear to disappear, because if they appear in your mind, if you don't identify with them like in a meditation, they just disappear. Not only do those thoughts appear to disappear, the corresponding appearances to those thoughts also appear to transform. They appear to transform, or a way of saying this in entrepreneurship is the areas of entrepreneurship, the innovation, the sales, the marketing, the operations, the finance, the leadership. Those areas in the business continue to appear to be cultivated or refined, or the business grows by grace and grace alone. You describe the experience as flow. You know what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say, and you don't worry about these things because you know the doer of the works is prior to the I that needs to figure it out. It is prior to that already figured out. So when he said, I am is a feeling of permanent awareness, the very center of consciousness is the feeling of I am. A great question to ask is, I know that I am pure awareness, yet what is that pure consciousness? So in the Peshitta Aramaic Bible translation, Genesis 1:3, it says, and God said, the light shall be, and the light was. God is that I am, Exodus 3:14. I am that I am. And God said, let there be light. What is that light? That light is pure consciousness. So all we're doing here is allowing that pure light of awareness, that pure consciousness perfection to emerge and appear as all these things in perfect harmony. Another way of saying it is, the radiant self shines forth, unfettered by conditions in mind. These conditions are blown away as you no longer identify with them. Now, a person may do whatever thing, I don't know. They may think they need to do this physical thing in order to be that, or this conceptual thing in order to be that, or this or that in order to be that. No shame, no condemnation. It can sound reasonable on the surface, yet that reason can also be their bondage. They're tied to that reason. and do not see the invisible attachment is generating the suffering. Let's say the individual wants to start a business. They might say, oh, I got to wait for this condition or that condition in order to be in place. Now, is that true? Is it really true? You know, in the silence, how we allow that pure light of awareness to emerge is by not reacting. Not reacting means not identifying with the condition in mind, or having no condition, unconditional fulfillment, unconditional perfection, as you are that infinite, supreme, absolute, unconditional perfection fulfillment, the fulfillment of God. I am not these illusory conditions. To prove the point, you are prior to these conditions. You can change this condition, you can do this, you can do that, yet you are prior to all these things, and you exist as perfection, as fulfillment. So there's no need to think that you need to do this or that in order to be that. You are already that. To allow that pure light of awareness, again, Genesis 1:3, the Peshitta Aramaic Bible translation states, and God said, the light shall be, and the light was. That light is pure fulfillment, pure perfection. We are just allowing the light to emerge, to appear as all these things in perfect harmony. By not conforming, do not conform to the patterns of this world, which again, the patterns of this world, or the identification to the patterns of this world, is in mind. It is the condition. And how do you know the condition? It appears as the thought or emotional dysregulation, or the individual about to identify with the particular thought, more specifically, that generates the emotional dysregulation, emotional turmoil. As soon as a thought appears in your mind that suggests you need to do this or that first, which doesn't make any sense, don't identify with it. That is how you do not react. And then there is no fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, for example. That could be some of the responses of that condition. And then the light emerges. That light emerges out of nowhere. Again, Genesis 1:3. It clearly states it. And God said, the light shall be, and the light was. So again, I am is a feeling of permanent awareness. You can't change that. You can try to change that if you would like. You are that prior to trying to change that. You are that. That is the very center of consciousness. And that consciousness, again, and God said, let there be light, or, and the light shall be, Peshitta Aramaic Bible translation, and the light was. That light is pure consciousness, perfection. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the works of Joel Goldsmith. He had articulated this really well. He said, when confronted with any human problem, instead of laboring for an improved human condition, turn from the picture and realize the presence of the divine spirit in you. The spirit dissolves, he says, the human seeming and reveals spiritual harmony. Though to sight, so where do you experience all these things in perfect harmony? You experience it through the five senses. In consciousness, you experience all these things in perfect harmony, that perfection, that fulfillment in consciousness. So he says, the spirit dissolves the human seeming and reveals spiritual harmony, though to sight this harmony will appear as improved human health or wealth. Illumination first brings peace, then confidence and assurance. It brings rest from the world's contests, and then all good flows to us through grace. So again, then all good flows to us through grace. And you can do nothing to witness that grace of God. You can do nothing to experience that grace of God, as it is given by grace and grace alone. So you've heard me say this millions of times. I've been saying this now for a number of years as I had come to the realization of that. And having come to the realization of that perfection, knowing that I am that perfection, my real nature is perfection, and I appear to experience in consciousness that real nature of perfection. That is all we desire to experience. That is all we desire to be. And you and I know different. You desire the same. You desire that, and you are already that. So you've heard me say it millions of times. You are complete perfection. There isn't a need to think otherwise. And that is true not because I said so. That would be egotistical. It is absolute, undeniable truth. There's no dodging this conclusion unless you want to waste your priceless attention on what doesn't matter. What matters is yourself, more specifically, the self, yourself, capital S-E-L-F, yourself, the absolute truth prior to all these illusions appearing and disappearing to reflect that absolute truth. So I am that pure awareness, you are that pure awareness, and our real nature is perfection. That perfection consciousness I am, and what is not, that is blown away by grace and grace alone. Now, that is happening more and more so. This is a conversation that I've been having with members of Flow-Based Prosperity, my school community, and out and about when I'm connecting with people. It appears more so than ever before. People have realized that. They have realized that they are that which is prior to all these things, and all these things appear to be in perfect harmony, more so with increasing frequency, as a result of abiding as that prior to thoughts that suggest otherwise, thoughts of lack or limitation. A person may have thought they need to do this or that in order to be that, so they generate a whole bunch of added steps. I'll give an example. So in 2009, I left my corporate IT position and I started an IT business, which I built a success to 2013. I ran it from 2009 to 13. People around me were saying things like, why are you going to start a business? It's a recession. What about this? What about that? You need to wait for this condition, that condition, first in order to be there, and then you can start a business. And I didn't listen to all those conditions. I only listened to that. That which the desire emerged from, to be as that, in form, we can say it that way, as that kind of business that I like to run, which is a reflection of my perfection. I did not identify with those conditions. Now, people can say whatever they'd like, because remember, as we always talk about, and I trust you realize as well, is only you can think what they think. No matter what I say to you, no matter what books say to you, no matter what people say to you, you're the only one in your own mind that can imagine what all of this means to you. Now, once you know that you are that, the illusions dissolve. And by that it is meant specifically, I was talking about this recently in my school group. I was saying, you know, my whole life people would say this to me, just be yourself, be yourself, be yourself. And in the early stages, I didn't know what they were talking about. I was like, well, this lack, this limitation, this I can't do this, I can't do that. You're saying be myself. When I identify with these things, people do not seem to reciprocate what I desire in my heart. It just doesn't work. Be yourself. What they were pointing to and what they were saying is be the self. That is yourself. That is the self prior to that I that thinks this or that, lack or limitation. You are already that self. That is the self. They're saying be the self. So, by being the self, you can really think for yourself. That's how I like to say it. If there's any thoughts that appear in your mind from these conditions that are in the subconscious mind that suggest lack or limitation or not being that which you desire to be, you just don't identify with them. A person may do whatever, for whatever reason, in order to be that. No shame, no condemnation. It could sound reasonable on the surface, yet reason can also be their bondage. What I mean by this is, why would I wait for some kind of condition? I am that pure awareness, you are that pure awareness, and our real nature is perfection. That pure consciousness is perfection. And I don't know how it works. I may know one step to take, hey, tender the resignation, start the business. Yet I didn't know how it was going to play out. And it played out in a very non-linear way, as I have shared the stories throughout the years on this channel. A bunch of things that I did to grow the business didn't make any sense. On the surface, it seemed to have gone against, let's call it common knowledge or conventional knowledge. But having been an entrepreneur now since 2009, I can say it still fits within the scope of just very non-linear best practices of innovation, sales, marketing, operations, finance, leadership, or as I say sometimes, my style, which is my best style, just as your style is your best style. So this reason of I need to do this or that first, again, it could be a mental thing, a physical thing, an emotional thing in order to be that. You see, that is clearly illusory, as you are that prior to the individual that needs to do all these things in order to be that. And so it could sound reasonable on the surface, yes. Yet reason can also be their bondage. They're tied to that reason, and they do not see the invisible attachment that is generating the suffering. They intuitively know to take that step, but they hesitate taking the step. They look around to see what other people are doing before they take the step, which is illusory because you can only think what they think. So the individual is looking around at people and imagining what they're thinking and imagining that they're going to be criticized for doing what they genuinely love to do. Yet I can assure you from experience that I just take the step and people don't come up to me and say those things. They don't say those things. Thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee, and the light shall shine upon thy ways. That is Job 22:28. Thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee, and the light shall shine upon thy ways. It means decide. Decree means decide. One of the Berean, for example, Bible translation says your decisions will be carried out. Now, how do you know what to decide? The person's like, I don't know. I don't know what to decide. Do you realize that the decisions happen naturally, effortlessly, spontaneously, in flow, being that? No thought of lack or limitation in mind being as that. You just naturally decide. You can connect the dots looking backwards and say, oh, wait, yeah, I guess I decided in that moment, but I didn't even try to decide. It just happened. Because that's the way it is. So your ultimate decision is to be who you are. You are already that prior to all these things. Not because I said so. Again, that's just could sound arrogant if I think that I need to convince you. In order to be that, you are that which is prior to the individual interpreting what I'm saying, which can be interpreted from the lens of conditions. You know, these conditions, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, response. Here we're getting to the heart of it. The heart of awareness from which everything springs from is everything in perfect harmony. So that permanent awareness, that is you. I am that. And my real nature is bliss. Yet how do I know that? I can experience that in the meditation, in the silence. Yes, I experience that infinite happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment emerging more so for no reason. Yet it also can be experienced in form, as all these things in perfect harmony. So that's what I meant by allowing that pure light of awareness to emerge. That stated, the individual tied to a reason, which is a condition in mind, just dissolve these conditions. Surrender these conditions. I just don't identify with them. I just stopped identifying with them, and I can honestly say all these things appear to be in harmony more and more so. Business growth, lifestyle, wonderful relationships, they're all symbols of that perfection. And I don't form an identity around these appearances because I know that there is more to that than what I can see. And even though these experiences are wonderful, wonderful relationships, wonderful business, wonderful lifestyle, I enjoy them. I experience them. I experience my fulfillment, love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. I experience it with, where do you experience it? You experience it within. And associated to these appearances, yes. Yet you still experience it within. So you experience it within and you play with these appearances, you enjoy them. Yet you don't form an identity around them in a way that limits you, because that's illusory. By that I just meant that's just a condition in mind. So an example would be is if an individual gets a particular amount of money in their bank account, and then let's say they invest this money, they put it into markets and the money is fluctuating. If the markets go down, all of a sudden now they think they lack something. There's emotional turmoil, there's stress, there's frustration. That's because they formed an identity around that appearance of the money. They may even have had moments in their life where they didn't have that money in their bank account, which was far less than what the markets had dropped to, yet they were happy. So we see it was clearly based on condition then. So you can play with these appearances, you invest the money, it goes into the markets, and as long as you remain as that, which is just not identifying with the thoughts that suggest lack or limitations, these conditions which are in the subconscious mind dissolve, and then you're naturally like that. Well, guess what? You are actually naturally like that. That is your real way of being. It's just an individual over the years may have placed these conditions upon consciousness and created a false identity construct. It is not real. You are real prior to. That is true identity, not identified with these appearances. That is why I teach you are that for no reason. And thus you can do nothing to be that, because you are already that. You are already that. You were always that. You will always be that which you desire to be beyond reason. You need no reason to be that, unless you want reason to be your bondage. I am that beyond reason for no reason. That is the way I am. So then let's use the example of entrepreneurship. I always say, just do what you love to do. Do what you love to do. You know, I used to learn this by listening to the Steve Jobs commencement speech. I used to listen to it over and over again when I was building my IT business. He said, follow your heart and intuition. Everything else is secondary. Do what you love to do. And I followed it. I didn't question it. Yeah, there were some thoughts appearing in my mind suggesting this or that is not the way it is. So I need whatever condition to be there externally, and then I can do what I love to do. And I just stayed committed to my vision. I just did what I love to do. And these conditions fell away. And sometimes these conditions would appear. So when I would identify with them, they would generate suffering. So let's say I was doing what I was loving to do, which is, let's say, going out there and meeting new prospects. If I went about it in a conditional way, as in I need them to give me this reply or that response, and if not, then I can't be that love, that fulfillment, it would generate suffering. There was clearly a condition placed upon that consciousness rather than allowing that pure light of awareness to emerge, that pure consciousness fulfillment. I was saying it needs to be this way or that way. If it's not this way or that way, then I can't experience that fulfillment. And I was experiencing suffering, so I just kept dropping those conditions. I said, I just do what I love to do for no reason. I do what I love to do for no reason. That's because the real self shines forth for no reason. Nothing can restrict the flow of the real self shining forth as all these things in perfect harmony. Love is who I am love, that I am that perfection, I am that fulfillment. And as long as I don't judge by appearances, I continue to experience myself with all these things. The real self shines forth. What also ends up happening is you get the results, which is why in the Bible it says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added onto you, and added onto you by grace and grace alone. So the individual was trying to control these things, force, manipulate, do all these things in order to get an advantage, us versus them, inner world versus outer world versus inner world. There is no such thing as inner world versus outer world. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the teachings of Adi Shankara. He said 3 profound things that clears this all up. He said, number 1, Brahman is real. Number 2, the universe is unreal. Number 3, Brahman is the universe. Which means that the universe only appears separate from you if you think you are not that. When you know you are that, and that is the only reality, the universe appears to be in harmony with you. Everything appears to be in harmony with you. People appear to be in harmony with you. Environments appear to be in harmony with you, because there is only God. Only God alone exists, animating all things in perfect harmony. That is the way that is. So when you go back to what Joel Goldsmith has said, which was articulating that point very practically for the human being, which is just surrendering the conditions. He said, when confronted with any human problem, instead of laboring, or you can call it seeming problem if you would like, instead of laboring for an improved human condition, again, not placing another condition upon consciousness, thinking the individual knows better than the source of fulfillment, the source of perfection. We just allow the pure light of awareness to emerge. That's what he's saying. So, we turn from the picture and realize the presence of the divine spirit in you. The spirit dissolves the human seeming and reveals spiritual harmony. Though to sight, this harmony will appear as improved human health or wealth. And this might not make any sense to the person in mind, but it makes perfect sense in the silence. In the silence, there's no confusion. In the silence, there is no uncertainty, no doubt, no such thing in the silence. Which is why at the end of every lecture of Neville Goddard, he would say, now let's go into the silence. You know, all these things are in perfect harmony in the silence. You don't need to do this or that in order to know that these things are in perfect harmony. You abide in the silence. And you know, clarity emerges. Clarity emerges as all these things in perfect harmony, or as he said it, though to sight this harmony will appear as improved human health or wealth. So again, reason. A person may say, I can't do it because of this or that reason. I have no problem with reason personally. There's always a higher reason. Yet a person may say, based on this reason or that reason, statistical probability, this or that condition, I can't do it. And I need this condition in order to be that. I need this condition to be there. Then I can be who I desire to be. Then I can have what I desire. Desire points to that. That is all you desire. You desire to be that, and you are already that. The suffering ceases upon realizing that. And all these things are added by grace and grace alone. And you can do nothing to be that. You are already that. So, you are that for no reason, beyond reason. And thus reason is not your bondage. Because you have transcended limited reason, which is a concept, an individual concept. See, I can come up with whatever kind of concept. I could just make up whatever kind of concept. And if I identify with a limited concept, it generates suffering, confusion, and I may even forcefully identify with that concept, further laboring in vain. I personally like how precisely Joel Goldsmith articulates everything, and I'm going to consider discussing more of his work in the upcoming videos, rather than adding this or that concept which the human tries to put in order to get the result. No concept, No concept is required. I am, rest as that. That's another way of saying, as we were discussing, the wonderful book, Power of Kabbalah by Uta Berg. What they say in there is, do not react or don't react to allow the light in. That's it. So, abide as I am, the light emerges. And conditions fall away. And emotions regulate. And these thoughts that the individual tries to get rid of appear to disappear. And so do the corresponding appearances. What emerges more so is that perfect harmony. Then you know that you are that, even more so. But you don't need these appearances to convince you. You know you are that in the silence. Yet, you get confirmation of that. You can say it that way if you'd like. Being that perfection, being that fulfillment in form. Wonderful lifestyle, wonderful relationships, wonderful experiences. Your style, which is the best style. You don't look around to see what other person's perfection, fulfillment is. Their style is the best style. And you don't judge by appearances and say, oh, because they have this or that, that means I can have it or not have it. That has nothing to do with those appearances. That is perfection prior to those appearances. And all these things that you desire are added by grace and grace alone. Because all you desire is to know that you are that and be that and experience that. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You can say, I know that I am that, certainly, that pure awareness, and my real nature is perfection. That perfection consciousness is all that I desire to experience, which is that in perfect harmony, which appears more so with increasing frequency on a continuous basis as far as the senses perceive as the pure light of awareness, unfettered by grace and grace alone. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Take care.